Yeah, so I mean, I call myself an accidental entrepreneur, I think, because I didn't get into GitHub because I was really interested in creating some large company. I don't think any of us were really interested in that. We wanted to create something that we wanted to see exist in the world, that if it had existed, we would have just paid for, and it would have been great, but it didn't exist, and the solutions out there were frustrating. And so we started building it for the love of building it, of creating something that we wanted to use and we wanted to see. And Chatterbug, the company that I'm running now, is the same thing, right? I would have preferred to have just paid for something that helped me learn a language in a very real way, with sort of conversations and curriculum that's all included. And instead, I found myself having to piece together everything. And so I think what the entrepreneurs that I'm interested in, the companies that I'm interested in, from an investment standpoint, from a mentoring standpoint, are the ones where it's people who are building things that they love, building things that they want to see in the world, and not doing it to be an entrepreneur, right? But to do it to be a creator. Yeah, I mean, there's lots of different. It depends on the origin of the company, right? What people are trying to build. I think a lot of times people ignore customer service in a large way, right? Because they think that they're not big enough for it or something. Whereas I feel like it's much more important for people to, of enterprises of any size, right? To really focus on customer service and make sure that you focus on one very specific segment of the community and make sure that you have super fans, people that love your product, people that would never use anything else because they just think you're doing such a great job. And customer service is a great way of doing that. And I think a lot of people kind of put that off until later, until they're bigger, and ignore their customers and focus on things that aren't as important to the overall growth of the company, which is sort of ironically trying to make the company really big, right? As opposed to trying to make the product really great. Yeah, so there's tons of things that we learned at GitHub. Some of them are a little bit more complicated, where we had a very flat organization in GitHub. We had an organization that had about half of our employees remote and the other half centralized in one building in San Francisco. And so I think stepping back from that after I left and looking at the growth problems of some of these, we have a very specific direct reporting mechanism now, which is not overly burdensome, but has people understand what is expected of them and what their future career path is, and things that we kind of ignored in growing GitHub in this very organic way. And for remote work as well, we want to set up the company so that it can function as a remote working environment, but there's downsides to that too, of having people feel isolated, right? Or specifically in bifurcating the company where half are remote and half are not is really problematic. And so we're trying something at the new company which is more hub-based, right? Where people can work from home. People have the sort of freedom and flexibility that you get with remote work, but we're trying to get people to be close enough to each other that within a day's notice they can get together and have, meet in person if that's something that the group feels that they need to do. And so I think balancing all of these different aspects of what worked and didn't work at GitHub, there were great parts of this remote culture that we wanted to maintain and see how can we mitigate the downsides of it. What kind of skills or competencies are we looking for? So, we have there's sort of a big difference in the type of company that GitHub and Chatterbug were. At GitHub, it was a very developer-focused company that hired developers to work on something for developers. At Chatterbug, we're building something for language learners, which is anybody, right? And so it's important to us, company-wide, to have a very wide sort of background of diversity, of people from different cultures, of people from different language backgrounds, to be able to build something that anybody can learn any of these very different languages in, right? And so from developers, where, if you're asking for like a technology question, we're Rails and React, and so in general that's what we're looking for. But we've also found that we can hire relatively junior developers and focus on them and build up their skill sets, and they can be really amazing at building the things that it's not necessarily the technology as much as it is, I guess, the attitude, right, of wanting to help customers, wanting to help people learn languages, having basic tech skill sets, but I feel like that's trainable, right? Like you can help somebody get up to speed in React or up to speed in a specific framework a lot more easily than you can have them come to work with a positive attitude and really wanting to help people and really caring about people learning languages. One of the things actually we try to do at Chatterbug is make sure that everybody in the company is learning a language all the time. So we have stipends for everybody, whether they're using our product or something external. If they're using something external, they can bring those ideas into our product, but trying to make sure that everybody's using the product, everybody's trying to learn a language all the time, because that's the most important thing at our company, is that everybody at every point cares about learning languages. Technical, yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I think if you are technical and you want to start a company, you're at a major advantage, because I think it means you can build a prototype, you can build something that you can use, you can do it with a minimal staff, with a staff of 1 or 2 people, right? I think if you're coming from the other direction, it's much more difficult to build something that you can test out. And so I think you have a huge advantage. In learning business, I think you can get by with finding people that are you know, if you're going for sort of seed investment or something like that, that you can get people to help you with the parts of building a business that are outside of product. But if you can focus on product, I think, especially in this age and in doing startups, you can get so far with so little if you have technical experience, right? I think the most important things to learn when you do start a company and you do start growing and you want to hire people is figure out the basics of management, right? I think that's something that we really ignored at GitHub, and it was very difficult on us for a long time, because we started with this sort of ignorance of how to properly manage people, how to give people good feedback, how to involve them in, how to help them in their career paths, right? Like, these are things that we didn't really care about in the early days, and it made things really difficult as we grew. So read some books on management. You can just basic overviews of how to do one-on-ones, how to give feedback, how to do reporting structures that don't have to be really overly wrought, right? But that really help everybody involved in the process feel comfortable and feel like they know what's expected of them and whether they're doing well or not. Don't be afraid to give good feedback, right? To say, don't make everybody feel like they're doing a great job all the time if they're not, right? Like say, this is what I expect, this is what's not happening, here's what I'd like to happen a month from now. I think that these types of things actually, everything else, I feel like a lot of people can have autonomy and can go really hard in a direction of building something amazing, but if they don't know what's expected of them, then they don't know which direction to go in, and people aren't aligning. So I think that's one of the things that technical co-founders have a hard time with, right? A lot of times because they come from maybe a background where they had a manager that they didn't like, and they kind of imbue that with all management is bad, and I feel like that's one of the things of being able to say no to people, of being able to give harsh, criticism if you need to, that's really difficult to learn as a technical person, where you're just like, I could just solve this problem myself, right? And the other thing I think that's probably really valuable for entrepreneurs that are technical starting a company is to, every hire that you make, hire somebody that's smarter than you, right? Or can be better than you at something. Because I think a lot of times tech people, when they start companies, they should start out as generalists, and then they should hire specialists to take over one part of their job sort of constantly, right? Where at some point you're surrounded by people that are better at everything than you are at any specific thing, and you really shouldn't be doing a lot of coding or general work anymore, right? Your job should be to know what all of the different pieces of the company are, and to hire people that are better at all of those pieces. Yeah, no, I think a lot of it, in my experience, was learning by making mistakes, right? And sometimes we did things that were abnormal and turned out to be really good as well. But I think the remote work thing was a thing we kind of stumbled into on accident, but ended up being, there were downsides to it that we're trying to identify and fix after the fact, but we learned how to do that better too over time, right? So a lot of it was trial and error. But the other thing was to just find people in the circles that you need to know about and get advice from them. There's a lot of people that are very successful that have a ton of experience that might be interested in your project and are more than happy to sit down with you and give you advice if you ask, and if you have sort of specific questions. And I think that's something that not a lot of people take enough advantage of, right? Of finding people that are successful in related industry, or an industry that they don't have experience in, and the other person has tons of experience in, and saying, can I buy you a coffee and can you help me out with this problem? Because people that have been through it and done it for a long time, they like to share that knowledge, right? And so I encourage people to try to reach out to other people that have a lot of experience in whatever industry that they're going into and saying, this is my problem set, what do you have any advice for me?